After giving birth at home, my husband called me. "I got another woman pregnant and I'm divorcing you. Don't come back home." My FIL, who was visiting me just then, heard everything. I will crush him. "I'm divorcing you because you got another woman pregnant. Don't fricking come back home, you useless whorehouse reject." I gave birth to a daughter back home, and while the whole family was celebrating, my husband didn't even come to see her, and instead had the audacity to bother calling me himself a full week after his daughter was born, just to tell me that load of horse shit. I had grown tired of his existence anyhow, and had become determined to divorce him myself. But to the surprise of even I, my husband made a series of oblique and scandalous comments over the phone, and he didn't even know that both of our parents were at home, listening to the conversation. This is a story whose moral is quite literally, don't judge a book by its cover, and how a kind-hearted, loyal person on the outside could actually be the worst scumbag known to mankind. The opposite could also be true, if such a person exists. I hope we can learn how good parenting isn't just teaching the ways of a decent human being, but providing the perfect balance of strictness and looseness to fit a child and their personality. As we'll see, too much of one can't necessarily lead to good results. My name is Rita, and I'm a 29-year-old housewife. My husband, Wayne, is a 35-year-old businessman working in an office. He and I were introduced by a mutual acquaintance, and after hitting it off the first time we met, we exchanged contact information, arranged a first date, and after things snowballed in a good way, we became a couple. Wayne was a good-natured and kind man, and my infatuation quickly blossomed into love. He took care of me in everything he did, and loved to surprise me with gifts of flowers, chocolates, and my favorite of all, cake. I was sure that I would be happy with him forever and ever, and that's why I enthusiastically accepted his marriage proposal. How could I have known that after getting married, he would go on and reveal his true colors to me? It turned out that Wayne Crockett was a very two-faced man. Outside the home and inside, when he was in a good mood, he was a very kind, caring, and gentle person. But at home, after coming home late from a hard day at work, for example, he fit the perfect description of a merciless tyrant, complaining about everything I did, even calling me on his break at work just to lash out at me. "What's with the fricking breakfast today? What the hell are you thinking, serving me leftovers like that? I mean, if it was that bad, you didn't have to eat it. What the frick? You told the actual breadwinner of the family not to eat breakfast? Who the frick do you think is feeding you, woman?" Whenever he was stressed out from work or was just in a normal mood. For that matter, he kept on cursing me both inside and outside the house. It had been a year since I realized his true nature, and I can't tell you how many times I've thought about divorcing him. But I have always wound up resisted the idea of divorce, leaving it up the air and never took any action to actually do it. I don't know why, but it was largely because of my in-laws. You see, the Crockettts were told that conceiving a child was very improbable, but after a lot of hard work, they finally bore their only son. But that didn't mean they spoiled him. On the contrary, they were quite a bit strict with him as they raised him in the best way they thought. Because they were such a strong-willed family, perhaps even a bit overwhelming, Wayne grew up to be a teenager that pretended to be a good boy all the time at home. However, stress began to accumulate at home because of the strict rules his parents set, and he used to release that stress by harassing his classmates at school. Nowadays, he proudly told me stories of the good old days, when he'd pulled a prank on this guy, and another on this girl. He had always acted like the kind, serious, and good son his parents wanted him to be at home, and thus the Crocketts were very happy that he was finally getting married. We were very pleased when we heard the news of Wayne's engagement, Rita dear. The old boy is finally taking a big step on the staircase of life. We were pleased indeed, and it's thanks to you, Rita. Thank you, from the bottom of our hearts. My parents-in-law and I have a great relationship. Their strictness notwithstanding, they were very respectable folks, and that was why I wondered if I should make a decision that would cause them any grief. Besides that, I thought it was premature of me to divorce after 1 year of marriage. Maybe a little more tell would cause Wayne to calm down and become the husband he ought to be. All in all, I thought that I was only seeing the worst in my husband at that moment, and that it wouldn't last forever, and that hope made me unable to take the step to divorce him. As this life of bundled-up emotions went on, I eventually discovered I was pregnant. The Crocketts, as well as my own parents, were longing for a grandchild, and they were overjoyed when they heard the news. Wayne was also happy. "You did a great job, Rita. We finally have a child on the way." He hugged me tenderly, waving his hands through my hair. The naive hope that he would change for the better as the fatherly responsibility for his child began to emerge gripped my heart ever stronger. But that turned out to be a knife disguised as Cupid's arrow. As my pregnancy progressed, I developed severe morning sickness, and there were days where I could do nothing but sleep all day long. Sometimes I barely had the energy to open my anvil-heavy eyelids in the morning, let alone stand up from my bed. And on the days that I was to stand up, I didn't have the energy or enthusiasm to do anything at all. I was so sleepy, nauseous, and irritable that everything my husband had to say sounded like extraterrestrial gibberish to me. My husband's abusive habit resumed in response to my sloth-like attitude. "There are pregnant women in my office that are still getting up every day and doing well at their jobs, bitch. Your own life is just one of a spoiled brat. Get the frick up, you piece of shit. You're supposed to do the housework. That's your job around here, for crying out loud." I didn't even get angry at his abusive behavior because I simply didn't have the energy to do it. I didn't care about him anymore, and I felt that the fact he, who worked his pregnant wife to the point of literal exhaustion and didn't even feel bad about it, would only be a bad influence on my baby in the future. I don't want the father of my child to be someone like him, and I decided that divorcing him after the baby was born was the best option. Until now, I have only had to put up with things on my own, but that will not be the case in the near future. That's why the determination to divorce my husband was strong enough to put into action. Moreover, my husband started working extra hours more often and came home very late at night more recently. I could confidently say at the time that our marriage was broken because I thought that the only solace I had was during the time he was away. When my morning sickness had calmed down and I had a little more time to think about it, I went to my in-laws to tell them that I was divorcing their son. I explained the situation to them, but they still didn't believe me. I mean, who could blame them, though? They had raised Wayne convinced that he was a sweet guy all the way, offering kindness and compassion to everyone in his life. When we were dating, I couldn't see my husband's true nature at all myself. And if you told me during the time when I was his girlfriend that he was actually a scumbag who had no respect for anyone but himself, I would accuse of being an escaped convict of a mental asylum. I certainly admit that Wayne can lose his temper at times, but this cannot be true. They were visibly troubled. It was then I wished I had recorded my conversations with Wayne, but I was suffering from morning sickness and couldn't tell you the answer of 1 + 1 if you asked me, let alone think ahead. Plus, there's no telling what Wayne would do to me if he found out I was recording our private conversations. For the safety of my child, I couldn't provoke him. That's why I asked my parents-in-law to keep quiet about my intentions of divorcing him. I will discuss this with him when the child is born. I told you both first because I knew you were eager to meet your grandchildren, and in the worst-case scenario, you might not see them at all. I want you to be prepared for such a situation, should it come to that. I am so sorry for disappointing you, but this is my final decision, unless he proves himself. I said I was sorry, but what happens between a husband and wife is their business. It's not our place to tell you what to do. However, if it's possible, we genuinely ask you to let us see our grandchild at least once. After all, it would be sad for us not to see any baby's face even once before we leave for a better place. My father-in-law said so I gave my parents' address as I was planning a birth at home and left my parents-in-law's house. I wondered if it was too early to tell them, but in my own way, I wanted them to know of my thoughts as soon as possible. I didn't want to say goodbye to them at the celebration of the birth of their grandchild. That would just be cruel selfishness on my part. Months passed by very quickly, and 3 months before my due date, I moved back to my parents' house in the city next door for the birth of my daughter. Yes, the baby turned out to be a girl, and because I've always wanted a daughter, I was overjoyed. Evidently, Wayne remained at our house, and because of his absence, I was able to recover my mental health pretty much completely, and then, exactly on the due date, I was able to give birth and hold my healthy daughter in my arms. After a very tiresome, draining delivery, Ray popped out of my womb, and she was absolutely beautiful. After about 3 days, Examinations showed nothing wrong with mother and child, and I was authorized to be discharged on Sunday. When the Crockett's heard that I was going to my parents' house after discharging, they also booked a trip to a hotel to come and see me and their new granddaughter. I called Wayne, to which he didn't answer, but a short text message exchange later on told me he couldn't take time off work, and the Sunday I was to be discharged from the hospital was a Sunday, so he said he would come up that day. When I told Mr. Crockett about this, he said, "Why wouldn't Wayne be the first to come to the hospital after the birth of his own child? Something's not right here." Needless to say, he was distrustful of his son. However, they were very much in love with their adorable granddaughter, Ray. As I was putting her to bed in her room, Mrs. Crockett said, "I'll be watching her in her room, dear. You please get some rest, Rita. I'm sure you and your parents have a lot to talk about." They took good care of me. To be honest, it's a big help because I've already filled out the divorce papers, and I was planning to meet him here at my parents' house that day and ask him to divorce me once he saw his daughter at least once. My in-laws seemed to be prepared for the meeting too, and they were getting a little nervous. But no matter how long we waited, Wayne never walked in through the front door. His parents were looking more anxious than a few moments prior, wondering if something had happened, when my phone started to buzz, and Wayne was calling me right at the right time. I had tried to call him, but he didn't answer, and we were all starting to wonder if there might be a problem or if his train was running late. I gathered everyone around before answering. My in-laws were visibly shaking with concern, but I knew it might be a good opportunity for them to see their son's usual attitude towards me. I put my phone on speaker and answered the call. "Hello? For frick's sake, you're sure late to answer, useless bitch." From the head-go, Wayne's abusive attitude was the most apparent thing that emanated from the phone. I was used to it, but the Crocketts and my own parents were absolutely mortified. This was how people usually reacted, huh? I now realized how numb I had become to the situation. The air around us became bone-chillingly cold, and my in-laws were stunned and dumbfounded. I tried to speak more calmly than usual. "I'm sorry. I was just putting our daughter to bed. She's so sweet. You should see her soon. She's waiting for her daddy, Wayne." "Wait, the frick? Why the hell do I have to head over to that old brothel of a house? I'm not going, you fricking moron." Everyone present in the room, including myself, was absolutely baffled by Wayne's statement. I knew he was cruel, but I never knew he'd be this cruel, especially to his own daughter. What? I involuntarily yelped before I could stop myself. I asked myself 317 times, what did he just say? He didn't say he couldn't go to see her. No, sir. He said there was no way he would go. Wayne didn't even notice our reaction. It was so silent in the room. "Why the frick should I go out of my way for you, eh?" He yelled through the phone, his voice cracking with all the rage he had. "I don't want you to go out of your way for me. I want you to go out of your way for our daughter." "Oh, sure. Wonderful idea. You tell me she wants to see me, when you really want me to help you with raising her, right? Don't use my own daughter as a means to waste my valuable time. The ankle biter has a pig-faced imbecile as a mother. I feel damn sorry for it, let me tell you. Anyway, point being, I'm not going over there, and I don't know any scum like you, so don't you fricking come back." My husband was even more outspoken than ever. I glanced at my in-laws and saw that Mr. Crockett's face burning bright red in fury and shame, and was just about ready to explode, but his wife covered his mouth and stopped him. I had already told my parents about my husband, but they were still so surprised by the sheer brutality of his heart-wrenching insults, which went far beyond what I had expected, that they stood frozen, unable to move their emotions to anger. Neither could I, for that matter. Wayne wasn't done. "I don't think I ever want to see you again. I'm divorcing you because you got another woman pregnant. I'm not going to support a woman who can't even do her own housework properly like a woman is made to do. I took all your stuff and threw it all away. Suits it well, being useless pieces of trash and all. Don't fricking come back home, you useless whorehouse reject." He hung up the phone before I could speak. And at that moment, everyone's anger exploded, all except mine. What the hell is wrong with that guy? Did he really just say, with pride, with so much damn pride, that he got another woman pregnant with impunity? Rita, get a divorce. That's an order. Divorce that piece of shit right now and stay here with us. My parents were trembling with fury. Meanwhile, my in-laws immediately got down on their knees. Forgive me, Rita. As parents, we feel so pathetic. No amount of apology will ever make for this. We're so sorry. My parents-in-law, who couldn't apologize enough, went on to bow so low they were making holes in the floor. My parents started chastising them. They were mad with anger. What kind of upbringing do you think you have to go through to grow up to be such a despicable monster? I thought to myself, I've got to do something about this disaster. Just then, my daughter started crying. The sound of her cries brought us all back to our senses, and we regained our composure. I got Ray from her room, and as I breastfed her, I held her close in my arms and soothed her. I'm getting a divorce. I'm going to ask for alimony and child support, and I'm never going to let that son of a bitch see my daughter, I declared, and no one objected, not even my in-laws. Mark my words, Rita. I will definitely bring that bastard back. And if you need fees to pay for any lawyers, please allow us to begin to apologize to you by paying for them. I was grateful for their offer, but I had a nagging doubt in my mind. Could they really abandon their only son? Now that I have a daughter of my own, I know just a little bit about how it feels to be a parent, and one of those things is that I will always stand by my daughter, no matter what. A parent's love is to be there for their children, no matter how dark and difficult times may become, and I was worried about my in-laws remaining loyal to Wayne. All lingering doubt disappeared with Mr. Crockett said, "That bastard neglected his own wife and even abandoned his own daughter, whom he was related to by blood. He's a disgrace to me, his mother and his whole family, and I'm going to destroy him." He had the angriest expression I've ever seen on any human being's face. My heart ached for him. The fury, the sadness, the shame, the self-hatred. It all must have been unbearable. 2 weeks later. "You leave the rest to me. You've just given birth and have to raise your daughter, my dear." I was struggling to take good enough care of my daughter at home. To be honest, I was so busy taking care of Ray that worrying about Wayne on top of that would surely drive me insane. Mom and Dad seemed to be communicating with my in-laws on my behalf, so all I could think about was my daughter, and I was grateful for that. Then one day, the Crockett's asked me to have a meeting with them. They wanted to talk about the future, so I asked my parents to watch my daughter upstairs, and I waited. Then they walked in, and to my great surprise, they had dragged Wayne with them. But he looked completely broken, physically and mentally. His head was shaved, he had 2 black eyes, and there was a big piece of gauze pressed against his cheek. I was stunned by the unexpected appearance of my husband, but Mr. Crockett went straight to the point. I made him sign the divorce papers that I had kept for him, and I also made him sign a written contract, binding him to pay alimony and child support. Unfortunately, it's true that he got the other woman pregnant, and I'm going to make him responsible for that too. Don't you have anything to say, Wayne? He glared at me bitterly as my father-in-law slapped him on the head. Wayne's eyes were ablaze with raw anger and hatred, so raw that I feared my own life. Then he blurted out, It's fault. What? Why the hell is it my fricking fault? Y'all are fricking banding together and bullying me. This is all your damn fault, whore." He started screaming and advanced towards me. "Once you got pregnant, you stopped doing anything at home. You became a fricking slug. You're allowed to be lazy, but I'm not allowed to go out and play. I could kill you." Mr. Crockett's Muay Thai trained fist lashed out and sent him flying away. I guess they forced their son to come along with them because they didn't think it would be right for them to take the initiative in our own marital problems. But he luckily destroyed himself because of the opportunity. For me, my husband's outbursts were a regular occurrence, so I'm glad he revealed his true nature to us all. Besides, now that I know once and for all that this monster was not fit for humanity, let alone a family, I could now dump him without any hesitation or remorse or pity. I don't need a big selfish baby who makes no effort to be loved by me. I'll file the divorce papers myself, and you'll pay the alimony. Once I said this to Wayne, I turned to his father and said firmly, "Please don't bring him here again." He nodded apologetically. "I'm sorry about everything." He apologized and left the house with his wife, dragging his half-conscious son by the collar. After that, alimony and child support were paid in one lump sum. I also asked for alimony from the adulterous woman, but she was about to give birth and her baby was innocent, so I arranged the alimony to be reduced on the condition that she would marry Wayne, because I decided that staying married to this abusive motherfricker was a punishment in itself. He, on the other hand, has almost no money left after paying alimony and child support. However, he has to raise a child with his lover, so he is going to be living a very poor life. The water and electricity are cut off after some time, and they have a ridiculously hard time finding food for the day, and they have just enough money left over to pay for the birth of the woman's child. But apparently, Wayne is trying to get his hands on even that, so they are in a heap of arguments. He was working overtime to pay for the affair, so he wasn't actually earning more money. Since he had no savings, he even took out a loan to gamble away in the hope of landing the jackpot. But as a result, he ended up with a huge amount of debt. He had co-signed his new wife as a contractor of the loan, and the adulteress went down with him. They were both in debt, and the adulteress later gave birth, and the last remainder of their savings evaporated. One could say that last lump of money as her medical fees was a wise decision, but if they had been able to make that decision, they wouldn't even be in this situation if they hadn't committed adultery from the very beginning. I don't feel guilty at all because in a way they fricking deserved it. Thereafter, the bastard who borrowed money from a shady source has been moving from one cheap, shabby apartment to another, working irregular shifts at various soup kitchens and construction sites every now and then. Because of his character, he doesn't get along with any of the volunteers and fellow workers, and now he lives in loneliness with no one to help him. Needless to say, his parents severed their ties with their son too. What a decision that must have been. But that doesn't mean I cut off my in-laws. I respect them hugely, and I believe that they will be a good influence on my daughter if they are the respectful people as they are portrayed to be. That's why I allow them to visit her once a month. My in-laws are always so excited to see their granddaughter grow up, and they are very active in her life, but they know full well they have no say in how I raise my children. They seem to think their parenting was a failure, and they're just grateful that they get to see Ray this way. Thank you for letting us watch over our darling granddaughter, dear. Truly thank you. My in-laws are admirable human beings in every way, and along with my own parents, who raised me amazingly well, I am determined to raise my daughter to be an even stronger person than I. Wish me luck.